Now, going over to the culture part of the podcast, you have Bud Light slashing corporate jobs. The boycott is working. So, contrary to pretty much every mainstream media outlet saying, "Oh yeah, this is ridiculous. It's just a couple bad weeks. There's no teeth to this bite, so to say." I mean, CNN, a couple of major news outlets said, "Oh yeah, they're just losing a couple of their." Actually, some of them actually, who was it? Was it Garth Brooks? There's a couple. What's a nice way of saying hypocritical or two-faced? Well, I can just use those words. They actually pejoratively called their fans rednecks for supporting the boycott. When in reality, I know a lot of people, both on the left and the right and the middle, who are actually participating in the boycott. Now, personally, I've been involved in the boycott for 10 plus years because I don't buy most beer, to be honest. I prefer spirits when the occasion calls for. Although I did purchase my first case of Yuengling ever, partially thanks to all the advertising online, the reverse advertising of Bud Light, that brand of Yuengling is rising up exponentially and got my attention. And I appreciate the fact they are still family owned, been the oldest brewery in the United States, still in existence. And I appreciate that, and I like to support family owned businesses. Now, it looks like Bud Light, week after week, has lost about 30% of their sales. They had one week where they quote unquote, only lost 23%. And of course, all the news outlets go, "Oh yeah, the boycott's done. Look at that. Only 23% less compared to the same time period week last year." Oh no, I suspect, especially with the football season and the sports balls being thrown, I think the boycott is only going to get worse. Of course, we'll see if I'm right or wrong. Now, in terms of the market share and all the things moving around, you have Yuengling, Coors Light, and Miller Lite. They're actually increasing 25%, 21.6%, and 16.9% respectively. Imagine having a 25% bump in your sales, and you're not doing anything. Yuengling is literally just not getting involved in politics. All of their, don't get me wrong, they make a great product, they have great people there, but this big bump in sales is just them not playing politics and just putting out a product. It's a brilliant thing for them to be doing. Now, in terms of the Bud Light ramifications from their ginormous business blunder of the century, let me know if you think it would be interesting to nominate a business blunder of the week or the month or the year. We report that daily because there are so many. But it'd be interesting to see. Maybe send Brandon Whitworth a trophy if he sells a job by that year. He's the current CEO of Bud Light. Now, getting down to the quantifications of this Bud Light blunder, they are having to lay off nearly 400 corporate office jobs. Now, they're claiming it's less than 2% of its workforce, and the plus side is they are saying that it will not affect frontline workers such as warehouse staff and brewery staff. Now, that being said, it will affect those jobs eventually, and while I mostly don't revel when people lose their jobs. Well, I don't revel in the fact when people lose their jobs when it's no fault of themselves. And especially in this case, if you were a brewer at Bud Light, that'd be quite sad because it wasn't your decision to make that marketing business blunder. It was some disconnected person in the office called Alyssa Heiderchild, who, ironically enough, was a frat girl. She then proclaimed that frat boys were bad for the brand and wanted to shift away, and she was the one that everyone credits for the business blunder of the century of hiring Dylan Mulvaney, who again, average fan of Dylan's is about 15 years old because it's a TikTok influencer and a trans influencer. And of course, that was on April 1st, which perhaps is a joke of the century, but it's one of those things where that's where the boycott really began. So it looks like most of these jobs are actually in marketing, and it looks like geographically they noted that these layoffs are quote unquote restricted, and they will eliminate corporate and marketing roles in major U.S. offices, including St. Louis, New York, and L.A. Now, in terms of the demographics or geographics of your users, I would guess most users or fans of Bud Light usually, I'd say on average, more maybe Midwest folks. I don't know how many fans of them are in Los Angeles. That almost seems a little disconnected for the brand for them to be based there. I know California's at least for automotive, they're the 10th largest consumer base on the planet, so I would assume it would be a similar large user base for beer as well. But it is interesting to have, what people think is a good old American beer company also having offices in there as well. Now, when asked for comment, Anheuser-Busch CEO Brendan Whitworth and former CIA operative, literally looked him up on LinkedIn, but he actually said, quote, "While we never take these decisions lightly, we want to ensure our organization continues to be set for future long-term success," unquote. He further explains, quote, "These corporate structure change will enable all our teams to focus on what they do best, brewing for everyone," unquote. Now, of course, if this was really true, they would have never got involved in politics or anything controversial. It perhaps was the easiest brand to embody and grow because all they have to do is put out a commercial once or twice a year with the little, what is it, the Bud Light or the Anheuser-Busch little horse pulling a little, what do you call it, a little case of beer behind it. The little Clydesdale horses, that's all they had to do. Put an American flag in the background, say something about patriotism. That formula worked for decades. And yet, they decided to embrace controversy and alienate a good part of their customer base. And by the way, they also alienated people on the left side of the political aisle as this has become a political issue because after the controversy first started, they didn't, quote unquote, stand with Dylan Mulvaney. So you actually have gay bars and holding companies who are actually banning Bud Light as well. So they joined the boycott. So people on the left, people on the right, and people in the middle, they're all joining the boycott. For the first time in 20 years, they're not the number one selling beer in the United States. They were supplanted by Modelo, which in the United States is actually owned by a separate brand, by a separate company by the name of Constellation Brands. Globally, yes, they own Modelo, but in the United States, if you're buying Modelo, you are accurately supporting the boycott if that's of your belief system. Now, this actually happened twice now, so I believe it was May as well as June. So that's 2 months in a row Modelo has beat Bud Light. First time in 20 years. Now, reports, many show Bud Light now at number 14th beer in the United States by sales figures. It'll be interesting to see. I suspect 4th of July was not a good, again, a lot of this sales data is indirect. So as opposed to a business model where you go to apple.com, you buy an iPhone, they know how to quantify that data like that because you went right to their website. In this case, you have Anheuser-Busch Bud Light. They brew it, they sell it to the distributor sends it across the U.S. Sometimes they sell it to a grocery store sells it to you. Then you have the restaurant model as well. So it's an indirect sales model with more steps and more complexity, so the data is a little delayed. Needless to say, I don't suspect their sales figures to go up anytime soon because they're also not addressing the issue at all. And to the CEO's, not credit, but from his perspective, he can't say anything because if he takes a stand either way, he'll immediately alienate even more people. So they literally are stuck between a rock and a hard place. Of course, they put themselves there. It is even more, not ironic, fascinating perhaps, or interesting, amusing. Just 2 or 3 days ago, the CEO of InBev, so that's, it's Anheuser-Busch InBev is the CEO for the European division, is based out of Belgium, which they don't just make waffles and great guns. They also apparently make great beer, mediocre beer. They're a holding company. They make lots of beers. But that CEO said, "Oh yeah, we're not worried about this. It's not that big of a deal. This little campaign, little business blunder. It was just one can, which they keep desperately saying one can. However, when asked for comment, Dylan actually said it was a campaign, which of course would be more than one thing, which is why Dylan posted multiple pictures with the product. So take what you want for who you want to believe there, but it's one of those things where the situation only seems to be getting worse and worse. And I don't see them coming out of this tailspin anytime soon. It'll be interesting to see. But right now, again, I'm not a financial advisor. I don't have it. But when it comes to Bud Light stock, it's also, they lost $28 billion in stock valuation since April 1st. That's when the market issue began. I don't see anyone investing in them anytime soon. Time, of course, usually shall tell. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in. We're trying to get to 3,000 subscribers by the end of August, so I'd really appreciate you taking time to click that subscribe button. Also, taking the time to comment and like the video really helps it out. It gets shared more and more. The more engagement we'll have, the more we'll be able to invest in the channel, get better production, and appreciate the feedback especially. Also, don't forget to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.